And we continue at 2:05 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang in Culver City.
John, Ricardo Lara came to this morning's press conference, didn't take any questions, and claims the FAIR Plan's not going under.
Let me be clear. Once the fires are brought under control, we will get data directly from the insurance industry and the FAIR Plan about claims filed, as we have that we have on all the other fires that may or may not happen. We are focused on maintaining the FAIR Plan's financial health while getting people back to the regular market where they belong.
John, what did James Gallagher tell you 2 days ago?
He said it was bankrupt. So he made that statement and then didn't allow anyone to ask any follow-ups about that.
Yep. He did his presentation and he got the hell out of there because he didn't want to be around when Karen Bass and Catherine Barger got asked question after question after question about the false alarms.
I'll tell you, of all of these politicians that are on television right now, only two of them look good. Tracy Park, the councilwoman representing Venice, she's everywhere, and she's telling the truth. And Catherine Barger, the supervisor from Pasadena, who was the only one to break ranks at that press conference and make the statement that the county's explanation for those erroneous text messages was unacceptable.
I'm going to play this again because Catherine Barger, and maybe if we have time, we'll play the longer version of it, but she completely isn't buying the crap that her own department is putting out there, and at least she can be honest about it.
I think that's absolutely ridiculous, and I told Kevin McGowan that. To tell people to go on a website when they may not have access to an internet is absolutely absurd, and that is, quite frankly, not something that I am recommending. Obviously.
Joining us to talk about this and much, much more is Republican political strategist who you can follow on X at The Thomas Guide, John Thomas. Welcome.
Hey, John. Great to be with you.
John, could you think of a natural disaster, or maybe not even a natural disaster, but just any kind of developing, life-threatening situation where the politicians at just about every level have dropped the ball this badly here in the state of California?
Not in my lifetime. I can't even think before my lifetime, John. No, this is not only at one of the biggest disasters, obviously, that has ever faced the state of California, but the biggest case of mismanagement. I mean, John, I have not found one glimmer of cohesion or things that were that surpassed the lowest of expectations in this entire process. It's deeply unfortunate.
If you're Gavin Newsom and you want to run for president, clearly you want the national profile. He was out campaigning on behalf of Grampy Joe when Grampy Joe was the Dem. He was out campaigning for Kamala Harris in places like Michigan when she was the Dem. He's going after red states on their policies regarding abortion. He went after them on their COVID policies. He does not want to be talking about California's problems. He specifically doesn't want to be talking about California's failures. I don't see how he doesn't get dragged into every inch of this, though.
Yeah, there's no place for him to escape. But, John, you said something I thought that was so insightful on Donald Trump Jr.'s podcast the other day, which is, all Gavin Newsom has been doing, as well as Karen Bass, is focusing on things that have bigger national interest, because for Gavin Newsom, it's all about president and in the next cycle. But yes, this is national now, John. He can't escape it, and it begs all of these questions as to why Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass did nothing to prepare the infrastructure for these kind of events. This wasn't a surprise. Prior candidates for office, whether it was Rick Caruso or others, have spoken out about it, and the politicians did nothing. Look, the question to me politically is, what is this going to spark in terms of when you look at an LA City race? Obviously this is going to be a top priority, and the incumbents are going to feel the voters' wrath as a result of it. And then nationally, John, it really is. This is probably Gavin Newsom's highest profile moment, and it shows it's an utter failure and incompetency in leadership. It's not a place you want to be when the biggest thing to your name is that of ineptitude.
Let's talk about the politics of this in terms of what potential voter backlash the incumbents could face. Let's look at Pacific Palisades specifically. That is a neighborhood that voted for Rick Caruso over Karen Bass, but in terms of partisan politics, they're Democrats that live there. Let's just say you're a Democrat that lives in Pacific Palisades. You're a homeowner, you're probably college educated, you're probably someone who has a white-collar profession, you're someone who despises Donald Trump, you're a registered Democrat, and you pretty much vote Democrat up and down your ballot. If you're that person and your home just burned down and you're about ready to really understand the government that you voted for when you try to go pull a permit to rebuild your house and you got to go in front of the California Coastal Commission and they want to rezone your neighborhood so that apartment buildings can pop up all around you and maybe even on your plot of land, you're about ready to have a real eye-opening experience. What do you think that person does the next time there's an election?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, in the state of California, typically incumbents get reelected 80 to 90% of the time. And that's typically because rank and file voters don't really think much about their state and local governments at all until something majorly goes wrong that deeply affects them. They were already not thrilled, obviously, with the homeless crisis and the crime crisis. We saw them reach their tipping point on the issue of crime, and therefore they ushered in Nathan Hochman. What happens now that so many folks in the city of LA and elsewhere are going to experience how horrible government really is, or ineffective, I guess, at the minimum. I think you're going to see a backlash tossing out most incumbents. But here's the question, John. I don't definitively know the answer, which is obviously the Republicans running are going to have an alternative vision. They're going to blame the party in power. I'm not sure, though, that Democrats in this state are going to start voting for Republicans statewide as of this. I think they're going to look for more conservative Democrats as a result. So I think this opens up a window for the Rick Carusos of the world. I'm not sure that it opens up a window for your standard traditional Republican statewide.
If you're Rick Caruso, you're obviously furious at the city's response. It hit him very personally. I think one or multiple of his kids lost their homes in the fire. I know that he developed portions of Pacific Palisades for commercial purposes, and I know that those buildings were being threatened. He ran on this issue. He ran on the subject of fully funding the fire department, something that was a sticking point between him and Karen Bass, who cut their budget by $17 million. If you're Rick Caruso, what's the play here? Do you finance a recall election against Karen Bass and then run in the recall? Or do you just keep up the criticism and plan to run against her when she files for re-election?
You know, if I were Rick, he's meeting the moment clearly. His profile has significantly elevated in the last, 48, 72 hours. As not just an I told you so character, but also showing a level of compassion and channeling the rage that is felt by so many Angelenos. If I were giving some informal advice to Rick, I would say, if the people want to finance a recall or do something, let them do that on their own. Rick should till the soil or try to remain relevant and continue to make a difference in helping to rebuild from the private sector and nonprofit sector, and then toss Karen out, shellac her at her reelect, much in the same way that Gascon got defeated in a traditional news cycle. But here's the deal, John. This, as awful as this is the fires are. This is unfortunately the kind of moment that I think we'll finally get the rank and file Democrats in a blue city like LA City to say, you know what, maybe I'm not quite ready to vote Republican, but I will leave my initial inclination of simply voting for identity politics because that makes me feel good, and I'll vote for who I think would be the best office holder. So this is a huge window of opportunity for somebody like Rick. It's obvious that he's positioning for that at this point, and I think he's going to win in a landslide against Bass.
What do you make of her response to the peppering of questions related to there being no water in Pacific Palisades, her being out of the country, now the text messages that are going out that are erroneous? She's always come across to me as being almost like a kindergarten teacher. She likes to rhyme. She likes to be cheerful. She doesn't like to get involved in screaming matches with people. But we're seeing a different side of her here. She seems to be petulant. She's snapping at people. She doesn't answer any questions when she's asked tough questions. She answers some other question that she wasn't asked. And it appears to be getting under her skin in a way that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, she comes at this, I think, from the classic legislator perspective, not an executive perspective. She being one of several hundred in Congress is easy to cut ribbons and those kind of things, but it's a dramatically different job to be in the position of an executive role like the LA mayor, and it looks like she's just not qualified. She's bungling it. And John, I mean, what we even saw, not just the fact that she chose to be in Ghana, chose to cut the fire department's budget, but really this thing got off obviously to a rocky start when she was met at the airport at LAX by a reporter who was asking her some direct questions, and she sat there in silence for what seemed like an absolute eternity. The fact that she was not prepared by her team or just being a seasoned politician to have a standard remark to the people of LA County and Los Angeles shows you how unprepared she was. And then at all of these press conferences, John, I see that she believes that she can punt and avoid answering any questions about why there was such a failed response, and she can try to use the politics of the moment, which is saying platitudes such as, I'm not going to talk about what happened because I'm so focused on saving lives. That's not cutting it, and the press corps isn't letting her off the hook, and that's good, but it's not good for Karen's political career.
What do you make of how Gavin Newsom plays his hand of cards? Because if you're Gavin Newsom, yes, you still have 2 more years as governor. You're a lame duck. You're really not going to go anywhere else in California politics. There's no open U.S. Senate seat. Any other position would be a step down for him. It's president or bust for him, particularly when there's no Democratic president to appoint you to anything. That being said, the Democrats in California usually circle the wagons when one of them is under attack. They defend one another, and they typically get through it. If you're Gavin Newsom, though, and there is a Democrat in California that's doing nothing but attracting negative attention, and some of that is sticking to you and damaging your national prospects, I'm not necessarily sure you feel the compulsion to defend that person. Karen Bass is now appearing in the New York Post, the Daily Mail, all of these national newspapers, all of these national news programs, and all of the attention that she's generating is negative. If you're Gavin Newsom, do you stand by Karen Bass? Do you let her dangle in the wind? Do you turn on her? What do you do?
I think we're going to see Gavin cut bait and run. He needs a fall guy and a villain in this story, and it can't be him, John. Obviously, every single thing Gavin Newsom's going to be focused on going, after the immediate aftermath of the fires is going to be his positioning and run for the President of the United States, particularly winning a Democratic primary. So he has to have an explanation and somebody to throw under the bus. That has to be Karen. And the other challenge, though, John, is the reconstruction, the rebuilding of LA County and the Palisades. It's not something that's going to be buttoned up in 12 months. The visuals are going to be there, the heartbroken, the continual heartbreak, the angry Californian constituents are going to be there for well more than multiple years, which will coincide with Gavin's primary run. So I don't know, even if he will, I believe he will throw Karen under the bus in the coming days. I'm not sure that even he can run from that because the optics are so against him as he gears up for a national run.
We know that he's been relatively lucky at the ballot box here in California. He's won 2 elections for governor, 2 elections for lieutenant governor, survived the recall, San Francisco mayor before that. California Democrats seem to be extremely tolerant of all of Gavin Newsom's deficiencies. However, if you're going to be president, you're not going to need California Democrats to vote for you. I guess in the process of counting all the delegates, we do matter more than any other state. But when you look at those early voting states in the Democratic primary, which are now South Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, those Democrats may not be as forgiving as California Democrats with Gavin Newsom and all of his drama. How do you think he sells that message to those people, given how bad all of this news is?
Well, he's just lost any kind of argument that he can make to these primary voters outside of California that he is competent and an effective executive. Therefore, he deserves a pay raise and a promotion. That argument is completely gone. So he has to lean on more the standard progressive tropes, like that he has put an express lane for abortions, that he's been tough on guns. He picks more fights with Donald Trump or something like that. Those are what he has to lean on. But the problem is, John, in some of these early Democratic primary states, like, they care about the basics. That stuff matters. And Newsom has just lost that argument altogether. So I wouldn't be surprised if this incident so derails Gavin's ambitions that he falls maybe not quite as flat on his face as Kamala did when she ran, but simply can't get through a Democratic primary unless somehow, I think, he engages as a leading contrast figure to Donald Trump over the next 4 years. But interestingly, he needs Donald Trump if he's going to save his own political career now. So it's a real catch-22. He can't save California without Donald Trump, but he has to pick a fight with Donald Trump to somehow save his own political career. It's catch-22.
Well, right after the fire started and the debacle began, his first impulse was to blame Donald Trump. Despite the fact that Trump has not even put his hand on the Bible, he's not president, Joe Biden is, he certainly had nothing to do with any policies at the state and local level in California. He's not a voter here. He does own land here, but that's the extent of it. There's nothing that Donald Trump had to do with the start of this fire or the response to this fire, yet he was the person that Gavin Newsom blamed. And I had a conversation with a friend about this, and we had a little bit of a debate. And despite the fact that it's a ridiculous claim and a ridiculous charge, I think for many Democrats, that's good enough for them. I think that by just coming out and saying that and just shifting the blame, they hate him so much, blaming someone that had nothing to do with it is good enough for them. And a large enough chunk of them will just go along with it because it's something they want to hear.
This is the standard trope and wiring of most Democrats, certainly at the national level, is when in doubt, it's all Donald Trump's fault. Look, but here's the thing. That may be smart primary politics, John, but as you can see, it did not work for Joe Biden. Joe Biden tried to blame Donald Trump as best he could, but voters just weren't buying it. So that only goes so far. Perhaps in a primary, that might be an effective place to go because the left has so much Trump derangement syndrome that everything wrong in this world somehow is Donald Trump's fault. But that is not going to work in a general election. I tend to think what will be interesting in the coming days, John, is how many Democrats that pulled the lever for Gavin Newsom or pulled the lever for Karen Bass are going to start forming coalitions against them because they're going to be so upset when they're stuck in front of the Coastal Commission and can't get their homes rebuilt.
John Thomas, Republican political strategist. You can follow him on X at The Thomas Guide. John Thomas, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks, John.
If you want to weigh in, the number's 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. If your phone is continuing to blow up with messages from the county erroneously telling you to evacuate, what do you say you subscribe to our podcast and then your phone gets blown up with messages that accurately direct you to our podcast?
Go to KABC.com, click on podcast, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You could do the only thing George Gascon does anymore.
Do a Google on YouTube.
Or get that handy-dandy KABC app. Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store, the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station and download all the podcasts. If you need to tune out from all the fire coverage, we have hundreds and hundreds of episodes that have nothing to do with the damn fires.
And we're on the move in the San Francisco Bay.
So we do the Fixed California Hour weeknights at 11 on KABC, on KSFO in the Bay Area. And KSFO has moved from AM 560 to AM 810. That is a huge, big, massive signal. You can hear it throughout Northern California, goes to Sacramento. And at night, when other stations power down, that signal gets so strong you can hear it across state lines. And you can hear it crystal clear in Southern California. So set a preset right next to 790 for 810. And if you're driving around 11 o'clock at night, listen to the Fixed California Hour.
All right. If you want to weigh in, give us a call at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to Jerry in Santa Monica. Jerry, hello.
Hi, John.
Hello.
Hi, John.
Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, thank you for this forum. It's really important. I lost my house, and I'm just trying to keep it under control. It's really hard. And, I have so many friends. Hundreds of friends have lost their home, and they're all trying to scramble right now what they're going to do, where they're going to go, are they going to rebuild, all these things that they're thinking about. And, one thing I have, and, maybe you can help me here, is, it looks like Hiroshima. It's all gone. There's only a few houses left, and that land is going to be so toxic, it won't be able to be rebuilt on for years. And I have immediate concern that it's going to rain here pretty soon, and everything flows down to the ocean, and we're going to have an ecological disaster. And I don't hear people talking about that. Maybe they are. Hopefully there's smart people in our government that are thinking about these kind of things. But man, what an overwhelming disaster we're having right now. I just went to the grocery store to buy water, and they're out of water. I went to Smart and Final. It's all gone. This is just so sad right now.
What do you think you're going to do? Where do you think you're going to go?
So fortunately, I have another place where my wife and I are staying, and we're safe and we're okay. We're devastated, but we're okay. And but we have so many friends that aren't okay. And then we have to decide, what are we going to do? Do we, I'm not a kid anymore. Do I rebuild, or, I have insurance, which is, it costs, they say about $1,000 a foot to rebuild. And it takes about 3 years in a perfect scenario. I think it's going to be 5 plus 7 years to rebuild a home. And who would want to live there? Everything is gone. Our churches are gone. Our schools are gone. There's a couple schools left, St. Matthew's, and I think one other school. But grocery stores are gone. Who'd want to live there now? I just hope I hope they're thinking on a much larger macro level than they're thinking about this. I watch these reports, on TV, and they're all saying thank you to each other, and they're backslapping each other, and man, it's not good.
Well, I could tell you,
it's hard.
I just embarked on what should have been a 4-month remodel that turned into a 2-year nightmare. And going through a remodel, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, it was more difficult to get this remodel over the finish line than it was for me to get a master's degree. I cannot imagine what the project would look like to rebuild a home from scratch, dealing with the city of Los Angeles, the Coastal Commission, and land that might be environmentally damaged. That's going to be a project like no other.
Amen. I hear you. And I don't have the capacity anymore or the patience to go through that. And, again, I'm worried about this ecological aspect of it. This land is all toxic now. They need to get bulldozers there and remove it. Otherwise, it's going to end up in the ocean. So there's so many issues going on right now. And every day you kind of wake up and you watch the news, and you know, you got to boil water now, and it's overwhelming. You know, a friend of mine who had a home up in Malibu, that far in 2018, they haven't finished yet. So, you know, this is a very wealthy community and a lot of great people. And, you know, people that I've talked to who are a little bit older, you know, do they want to go through this again and rebuild? It is really challenging, really challenging. I'm a lucky guy. You know, I bought this house a long time ago, spent everything I had to build this house. 35 years ago, we built it. Had my family there. We had weddings there. We had so many events. And I feel so blessed to have had that. But, boy, my life has changed forever.
A good friend of mine had her home burned down in Corral Canyon in Malibu. And she went and tried to rebuild it, and the Coastal Commission was the real problem for her. And they said, well, you can't build what you had before because all of our rules have changed, and we don't grandfather people in for new build. And she said, well, it's not new build. I'm just trying to bring back what I had before. Nah, you can't do that. And so for her to get through inspection...
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I mean, I had dinner last night with the builder, and he said all those homes on the coast won't be able to be rebuilt. The stories of the Coastal Commission, I don't think I'm in the Huntington Palisades, maybe a mile from the ocean. I don't believe we're affected by the coastal, but I have so many friends that are, and that is just another step one has to go through. Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, yeah, no. What she had to do was she built what they told her she could build. They came and approved it, and then she just went ahead and built the other parts of it without the permits. So when she goes to sell it, it's going to be a nightmare and a half. So she's essentially stuck in that house until she dies, and then whoever inherits it is going to have to try to bring that home back up to code. But people aren't trying to game the system. You're just trying to make yourself whole, and the government is going to step in, or at least did in her case, and tried to prevent that from happening. If there's any group of people out there that deserve a break, it's people who lost their home in a fire. But I just haven't, or my experience has been with those I know who have experienced this kind of loss before, is that there's no sympathy from the government. They treat you like anyone else, and they demand that you cross all your T's and dot all your I's to their liking.
John, you're spot on. My home survived the initial fire. The next day, someone sent me a picture, and it was fine. And I said, how lucky am I? And then about an hour later, another buddy who was up there said, Jerry, your house is on fire, and it's gone. And there were fire trucks. He sent me a video. There were fire trucks in front of it. And he said to me that, you know, I don't know if this is true or not. He said there wasn't water. There wasn't water in the hydrants. So I'm getting these letters now from people, you know, just about class action suits and all this crap that's going on. It just, you know, I haven't done anything. I'm just overwhelmed. I'm just kind of overwhelmed by this whole thing right now. Just trying to get through the day.
Oh, yeah, and be careful for the scammers out there, because there will be people, there will be bad actors who come in and try to take advantage of all of you. There will be people who do things that, I mean, you would assume human beings would not be willing to do, but there are really people who lack any kind of moral compass out there.
No doubt. No doubt.
Well, yeah. I'm so sorry that you lost your house. I'm sorry that you're having to go through all this. But I will say this.
Thank you.
I am happy that you and your wife, you're healthy, you're with us, and you are here to tell us all about it. Because as bad as it is to lose a home and lose your property and lose your pictures and your memories, life is precious. You can replace all of those things. You can't replace yourself.
Thank you again for this forum. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Rose in Marina Del Rey. Rose, hello.
Oh, hi, John and Randy. I love your show. I just wanted to share this conversation that I had with a DWP representative this morning after I was rudely awakened at 6:30 by another error message from the county. So I turned on Fox News and I saw Bill Melugin doing a live shot from the Palisades. And he was addressing that there is all water flowing out of various pipes of the houses on all the streets, and it's going straight out into the ocean. And it's clean water. And I couldn't believe it. So I called DWP, and I got a representative, and I said, do you have a team up there turning the water off to all these homes? Because there's water coming out of all of the pipes of the homes up there, and it's going straight out into the ocean. So the woman said, hold on. So she was gone for like 15 minutes. So she came back, and she said, I need a specific address. And I said, address? There's no house. There are no homes there. It's the entire blocks of what used to be homes. Their water is flowing out of the pipes and going into the gutter and going down the street into the ocean. And she said, there's nothing we can do unless you give us a specific address. So I said, this is unacceptable. Go up there and turn off the water by blocks of where the homes were. And she said, we can't do that. So I luckily have Tracy Park as my counsel person. So I got on the phone and I got one of her aides and I told him the whole story. And he said Tracy was up there and he was going to relay the message to her that was just totally unacceptable. I cannot believe how incompetent this whole thing is from top to bottom. And honestly, I don't even know what to say anymore about how this is all being handled. But, you know, your previous caller that lost his home, I mean, my heart breaks for him. And they can't even turn the water off to stop it from flowing down the street into the gutter, into the ocean.
Unbelievable.
And these are people who would regard themselves as environmentalists, too. All right, that's going to do it for us. We'll be back on Monday for another live and local edition of The John Phillips Show right here on Talk Radio 790 KABC.